Hey, it's Jordan. I'm delighted to be joined by Savage Joy. A lot of you might know her story, but a lot of you might not. And this is part of our economic Hunger Games series. And why I call it that is because we're getting a lot of marketing and narratives from the White House and media that we're in the midst of a historic economic recovery. But when I talk to people, it's historically bad for most people other than the donors to the Democrats and Republicans. Savage, we've spoken before, but as best as you can, kind of describe where you were in your life, many years ago, and the dramatic shift, health wise, financially. I'm sure COVID didn't make it easier. That has gone on in your life.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. This is such an important series. Something I wish um, uh, people with big followings did more. And I thank you for being one of those people who's actually reaching out to people to listen to their pain and listen to their stories. In 2020, I woke up with most of my eyesight gone, and it was totally unexpected. And at that point in my life, I was almost 40, and I was pretty, I've done my show almost 5 years, but I was still working full time. I was making okay money. I was making like $17 an hour, which is, pretty good considering. And, had insurance, and my husband works full time. We were not living paycheck to paycheck. We weren't living extravagantly by any means. But we went out to dinner once a month and stuff like that. We were not hurting. Um, but then when I became blind, literally overnight, everything changed. I started wondering, can I continue to work? Is this temporary? Um, and although I had insurance, the medical debt started to pile up very quickly. Um, I first went to the emergency room to see, is this just like some kind of medical anomaly? Is it like one time thing and I'll go back to sleep and my sight will be better the next day? Things like that. And they said, no, this is a super rare condition, and especially for someone your age. And of course, that being said, I had worked in healthcare for over 10 years, and including pre-authorization. I knew I was up against some shit, like trying to prove that I needed these eye treatments. Um, and each eye treatment they wanted me to have was over $12,000 for each eye every 30 days. And it was with those that it doesn't bring my sight back, but it tries to stop the rest of the sight from depleting. And, of course, the treatments were denied because they're not exactly profitable to give people for free. Um, so I had to appeal it. So I could not get them done in the meantime because they said, look, if you're going to do it, you need to sign this paperwork that if they in turn are not approved, you will be paying out of pocket for this $25,000 every 30 days. And I was like, on top of the trauma, like I can't really see much anymore. Um, I'm faced with the hostage situation of, do I sign this and risk owing $25,000, which I clearly do not have? Um, and so on and so forth. And, then I ended up losing my job because in Pennsylvania it was totally legal, because I was doing 52 words per minute typing, and then it went to like 19 per minute with mistakes. And I was very much so in denial. When I was typing, I would hold the keyboard like this. And then if I heard someone coming, I would quick put it down, because I was terrified of losing my job. Um, and I did. And it was totally legal. And from that moment on, monetarily, so 2 years ago, my life just crumbled. Um, so, and everybody knows how bad the sick care system sucks, but um, there's a lot of other things that go into disability that people don't think about, which is, then after accepting the fact that, this isn't going to get any better, I had to apply for disability. And Social Security is, I mean, we've all heard stories. They are like next to impossible to get approved. And blindness is supposed to be one of those things where it's just like automatic. But it wasn't. And I was denied the first time. And it took me almost 2 years without a cent of income to be approved. And when, during that, I pulled out my entire 401k that I'd been saving for over 10 years. I took out credit cards. I did everything I needed to do just to survive and to, my mortgage doesn't stop. My medications don't stop. My electric bill doesn't stop, things like that. And while I am very fortunate because my husband works full time, I'm still very much so a person who wants to contribute. So it was incredibly difficult to, have no monetary means to help, and you really go through this sense of feeling like nothing because you can't work. It's not that you don't want to work, it's that people don't want you, they don't want to hire you. And if you dare try to get a job, even if it's part-time, even if it's 1 day a week, if you dare while you are waiting for Social Security to process, you're done. You have to start over. So I wasn't, but I got to the point where I'm like, I was so desperate. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try to get a job anyway because I can't wait. And I'm glad it didn't work out because then I would have been so screwed and had to start over, and pushed it back even further. But it got to the point where I think one of the rudest awakenings was I did get a job in my field in healthcare. And it went so well. They loved my resume. I interviewed with 3 managers on the phone. It went so well. And they were like, we want you to start Monday. You're perfect. You're exactly what we wanted. And then they said, we just need you to take a typing test. It's part of formalities. Let's just say they rescinded their offer. So it was at that point where I was like, yeah, nobody wants me. So I have no money. I have no real job opportunities because even when I'm given them, they're taken away from me. And that's legal. So I'm one of millions of people who are going through this.
Right. And, that's got to be incredibly frustrating, but also infuriating because supposedly we are, the city on a shining hill and all that BS. And if, separate from COVID, if through no fault of somebody like you, blindness, deafness, other disability, there's supposed to be safety nets, but basically those safety nets have enough holes to fill the base of the Titanic. And were a driven person that essentially had a feeling of societal rejection.
Yeah, absolutely. And, since, hurting monetarily, even since I've gotten approved for Social Security, like, it's not a lot. And regardless, I understand the whole, anti-capitalist sentiment. And in so many ways I am, but not being able to work and having that taken away from you. I don't know if it's pride, I don't know, but it really does mess with your head, and it really does. And maybe it's the, societal thing of your work is your worth. But it does really, really get to you, depression, anxiety wise. Because you're like, nobody wants me. Like, nobody, like, I'm a hard worker. I've worked for 25 years. I'm experienced. I know what I'm doing. I'm educated. But none of it matters. And I've been working with this blind workplace thing in Harrisburg, where they work with the Association of the Blind and they try to get you jobs. Now, one of the jobs that they mainly get people is with the state. And I've worked with the state Commonwealth for years. So, sure, pay well, great benefits, cool. So, even if I can work there part time, at least I can get back to work and have some extra money and try to take care of all these bills I've accrued. And then I find out, even though the state is then required by law, once you would be hired to, give you those blind accessibility necessities, bigger keyboard, bigger, monitor, dictation devices, things like that, you still have to take a typing test without those things to get in. So, yay, you're going to try to help me get in the state, but I can't get past the typing test to be able to be allowed to have that stuff that'll make me do my job. It makes no sense.
Right. And can you kind of talk about, I know your husband works, but you fast forward to now, I mean, gas, food prices, rent, and rent is going up 30 to 50%. If you want to get a house, good luck to you. Has the economic noose, for lack of a better word, tightened in recent months?
Absolutely. And, I can't drive. Nobody wants me on the road, that's for sure. And public transportation in my area just is not, because I'm outside of Harrisburg. If I were in the city, it would be better. But, I rely heavily on Uber and Lyft and things like that. I don't have any other choice. The last month I was working, I spent over $500 that month, just to get back and forth to work. Um, the transportation issue in itself is incredibly expensive. Um, so that alone also is contributing to debt. Like, okay, so I have to pay like all this money to get to work. So I'm really only working like 6 hours instead of 8 hours. And, you weigh your options. Is this worth it? And, things like that really take its toll. So, that's another added expense. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And, talk about, you hear all this bluster about the historic economy and the booming economy. Well, you have obviously a disability and this and that, but even separate from that, I mean, who's it booming for? Certainly not you.
They definitely look at the stock markets and Bezos and people like that, Elon Musk, to gauge what is booming and how much. I mean, our president is so in tune with people, what people are going through, that he literally said, hey, you guys can save $80 a month if you just buy an electric car. And I mean, yeah, I have like $50,000, but aside for that, hell yeah. And like saving an $80 a month, like that's supposed to make a total change. Um, things like that are, it's beyond tone deaf. It's just straight up just ignorant. And when you hear things like that, you have to wonder, do they know and they just really don't care? And I think the answer is yes. I think that they are very well aware of at least some suffering. San Francisco has 13-hour food bank lines. You're telling me Nancy Pelosi doesn't know that? Of course she does. She just doesn't care. She has her ice cream and, things like that. She doesn't care if you can eat. We are watching eugenics of the poor. They are cool with that. It's survival of the fittest, and they are very well aware.
Right. Absolutely. And can you kind of talk about, I think you're an example. We basically hear from the Biden administration, Republicans do the same thing when they have office, that, lowest unemployment claims in history since 1960 something. GDP is up. All these jobs came back. But at the end of the day, for those who can work, a lot of the jobs coming back are the same non-living wage jobs as before the pandemic. And we also have a record number of workers quitting, which also affects unemployment claims. So can you kind of talk about, there's seems to be that facade of artificially strong economy, when in reality, folks like you are not just economically, but kind of spiritually and psychologically really, really left behind.
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing I always think of is like unemployment numbers are going down because people have like 2 and 3 jobs. So yeah, I mean, it looks like all these jobs are being taken up, but it also, there are so many things that go into play. Like you said, I mean, we have a recidivism rate in our criminal and justice system. You get out, you can't work. The unemployment line. I mean, how many people do we know that are still owed back pay from unemployment? I mean, hundreds of thousands. So those are not accounted for. What about all the people striking? Cool, they have jobs. Guess what? They're miserable and they're in horrible, situations. So should we count that as a victory? Is that like, yay, but they're employed and they're actually protesting their work situation. So that to me should not be counted as a success. And then also these people with their jobs, are they insured? Are they being paid a living wage? These things like that are not being considered. So just, statistically, people working, yeah, that's great, but are they happy? Are they fulfilled? Are they, still living paycheck to paycheck? Are they going homeless like countless other people? Are they on the verge of being evicted? So there's so many things that go into, well, at least the work numbers are up.
Mhm. Absolutely. And, for you, not trying to elicit tears or anything, but you're a driven person. So can you kind of just talk about emotionally? Uh, it must be extremely disheartening because, for me, even without that disability, I get restless when I'm not on the road for a while because that's where I really feel the most invigorated. When I'm not on the road, I'm working from home, but it's either you're really busy or sometimes I'm kind of like looking for things and a little bored.
Mhm.
And that for me triggers, depression and that kind of stuff. For you, you must be home more than you want to be. Talk about basically just emotionally the toll this has taken on you.
Yeah, I mean, this has been, I rarely open up about this, but there is so much like suicidal ideation with this. It's I cannot fulfill my life. I'm existing. I'm not living. Like when something like this happens to you, you have two choices. You do a woe is me, I'm a victim, or you say fuck this shit and you get up and you fight. And I have days of both, but I try to be a fighter above all. But there are days when I just don't want to get out of bed. I have called the suicide hotline several times and said, what is the point? What is the point of all this? For what? Like, why am I fighting when I, and you have to weigh, is this being defeatist or is this being realist? And at a certain point, you're like, this is being realist. This is the reality. And, there's so much more that goes along with being incapable of working and just feeling like you have no worth. And, um, knowing you are capable of doing things, but knowing people don't want to give you a chance. And then constantly being rejected, even though, someone who works there and they're going to recommend you. And you finally get a little bit of hope. And then it's like, yeah, they don't want you.
Right.
So it's just the constant rejection. And as if that's not bad enough, you look at yourself and you're like, okay, I'm 42. Is this what it's going to be like the rest of my life? Am I never going to work again? So that hits in too, because it's like, okay, this sucks right now, but is this going to be the rest of my life? I don't want to live that way.
Right.
So there's so many things that just play into it. And I was going to see a psychologist I really, really liked once a week, and I can't afford it anymore. So, thankfully he's cool. I'll email him or text him and be like, yo, like, I need some advice. And he'll tell me like off the clock, so to speak. But mental health issues are the highest they've ever been in our lifetimes. And through lack of insurance, lack of means, lack of all of those things, too many work scheduling issues, people don't have the ability to get counseling, medications, whatever. And do I think it would help me? I don't know, but I'm open to trying. So it's like every time I even want to try something, it's like, kind of stacked against me.
Right. Absolutely. What's your message? Because I actually have seen in my audience a lot of other folks disabled or, for whatever reason, have challenges working. I know they have financial issues too. What's your message to other people that might not be the same exact thing, but are going through similar things?
It's so hard to answer this because I don't want to be like, let's just join together and everything's going to change. But at this point, I am really done with people asking. It's time to demand.
Right.
Demand. Pete Buttigieg, your transportation dude, where are you helping disabled people who the ADA has been around for decades and still doesn't help certain people? Biden, you could do 1881A overnight and give us all health care. Where are you? Start holding people accountable. Start demanding. Start fighting. And there is a disabled community. They may not have, the same disabilities, but if you type hashtag disability Twitter, you will find people who will reach out. After I did Force the Vote town hall and I shared my story for the first time, I had hundreds of people reach out to me and share their stories comparable to mine. And it takes so much bravery to share what goes on personally with you, but I could not take that back. That has helped me so much, even though they're so-called strangers, to receive the support of people just saying, I can't imagine what you're going through. I send you my love and support. those things really help. But on the action side, let's get the shit together. Let's do everything we can. If you're disabled and you can't march or something like that, make signs. Just grab pieces of cardboard, make signs, give them to someone to drop off to the protest. Join in unison. We need to learn things from people in other countries who are like, hey man, we're getting in the streets. And then all of a sudden, hundreds of thousands of people get together and demand something. We are, if we don't do it now, we're not going to do it. So it's time to hold people accountable, step up, demand what we deserve, and acknowledge the fact that we are worthy of living a life that is livable and lovable and not just existing. We are worth more than that.
And my last question, I think it's important, since you have your own show, which you could plug, and kind of know folks in independent media, progressive media. Do you think that, our own sandbox is doing enough to tell these stories? Because what I see is a lot of clickbait. I see a lot of people fighting with each other. I see a lot of stuff that reacts to other people's commentary, everybody's human. When you get big numbers based on, conflict and sensationalism, you kind of want to do more of that. I've avoided that to my own detriment and this channel's own detriment. But shouldn't people with much bigger platforms than Status Coup be interviewing folks like you, interviewing others that are economically struggling, whatever the case may be, to kind of pop that bubble of the booming economy?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as I said, I've been doing a show for almost 5 years, and the silence that has been, I think I first really noticed it when I was a lead national organizer on 56 Medicare for All actions across the country. Something historic, something that has never been done. And people with the biggest audiences, crickets, never even shared one of our posts, even though we were constantly DMing, and they follow me. So I know they're seeing this. And I would tag them in posts, and I would DM them, and I would say, hey, we could bring so many more people out if you just share this post. Never. Just complete crickets. And yes, I do, and I'm not going to call out names, but I do find it really frustrating when certain people who especially were involved with Force the Vote and were standing next to me in the protest at DC and have heard my story and blatantly ignore actual activists who are fighting for this. I don't care if it's me, but where's the disability representation? Where is, and in publications as well, I'm submitting my stories to, magazines I've read for a decade, but there's no representation. So, and I'm glad as hell I've never done that. Look at this clip. Look at this. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care what other drama is going on. To me, I'd rather, discuss things that are actually happening in the world and things that are affecting humanity. To me, that's much more relevant and worth discussing. And if that leaves me at 2,000 followers on Rockfin, then so be it, because I really don't care enough to watch, salacious, shiny object YouTubes all day, talking about, well, this person said this. Let them. It doesn't affect my life. Let them talk about whatever they want. I'm going to continue giving substance, period. Like, if it hurts me, so be it. At least I'm, pleased with what I'm doing at the end of the day.
And tell people, where can they watch your show?
So I have a YouTube in Rockfin, Savage Joy Marie Man, or you could just follow me on Twitter, where I post all the links at Savage Joy Marie 1.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. We'll keep in touch, and be well.
Thank you so much, Jordan. You are doing an amazing job sharing these stories. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.